From a gas station in Volgograd that went up in a massive ball of flames, and a truck driver in Russia who thought he could beat a speeding train, to a landslide in India that destroyed an entire city block, and a silo in Denmark that fell the wrong way during a controlled demolition. Here are 20 catastrophic failures caught on camera. Ani village is a small community in the Indian state of Himachal Pradesh. On August 24th of 2023, locals could only watch in horror as a landslide nearly took out the whole town. The village was built at the base of a mountain with a long landslide history. In fact, the area itself may be one big landslide complex. If that's the case, it's believed the lower slope would be naturally unstable. Maybe they should have considered that before building beneath a dangerous mountain. They could have avoided this near tragedy. Thankfully, the locals noticed cracks in the weeks leading up to the landslide. Everything was vacant when the mountain finally collapsed. Madhya Pradesh is the second largest Indian state by land area and fifth largest by population. It's home to about 72 million people, 97% of whom have access to electricity. That means the Department of Energy needs to churn out a lot of power. Any hiccups can be catastrophic. On September 4th of 2020, a demolition crew arrived at the West Central Railway Zone in Madhya Pradesh. You don't have to be an expert to know it wasn't supposed to go like this. They were trying to demolish a large stone slab near the railroad. Looking closely, you can see a massive boulder fly through the air and smash through the overhead transmission tower. Thankfully, nobody got hurt during the explosion gone wrong. A spokesperson for the railroad said, "We will ensure that more precautions are taken in future." That is corporate jargon for, yeah, we kinda messed up. Volgograd, Russia is a large city on the Volga River. It's about 600 miles south of Moscow and is home to roughly 1 million people. Most people know it by its former name, Stalingrad. During World War II, it hosted one of the largest battles in the history of warfare. After Stalin's death, Russia changed the name to Volgograd, meaning Volga City. On August 10th of 2020, a fire broke out at a local gas station. First responders arrived shortly after 12 noon to battle the blaze. But the fire proved impossible to control. All they could do was evacuate the area and watch the place go up in flames. What happened next reminded people of the famous battle. It's believed that the fire broke out when a spark of static electricity ignited the fuel flowing from a tanker to an underground storage tank. As you can imagine, there was a lot of gasoline sitting there, just waiting to explode. The fire spread over 10,000 square feet. It required over 70 firefighters and a special firefighting robot to finally get under control. Landslides aren't the only natural disasters Southeast Asia has to worry about. Water has other ways of ruining their day. Take this sinkhole in Bangladesh, for example. On November 19th of 2015, a sinkhole opened beneath a beach house near the capital of Dhaka. Thankfully, authorities noticed the signs and evacuated the home before it fell. The scary part is how quickly the house disappeared. The ground swallowed it whole. Had you walked by after, you'd never know something used to stand there. Now, sinkholes like this come in two categories: natural and man-made. Natural sinkholes occur due to topographical factors. Man-made sinkholes occur after large amounts of underground excavations cause fatigue in the foundation. Rain also plays a major role, as the water will weaken the dirt and cause things to, well, sink. Varese, Italy is a small city near the Swiss border. It's home to about 80,000 people and a crew of construction workers with a scary story to tell. They'll never look at cranes the same way again. On May 9th of 2017, a large crawler crane moved into position at the Arcisate Stabio railway yard. It was hoisting a massive section of a new viaduct, but the piece of concrete bridge was never put into place. That's because the crane tipped over, leading to this viral video. Thankfully, nobody got hurt when the crane came crashing down. The man escaping at the last second is the crane operator. He dropped over 10 feet from the cab and ran for his life as the crane toppled behind him. If you thought the crash was loud on camera, imagine standing right next to it. An investigation found a problem with the crane itself, not with the operation. That was certainly good news for the operator. He may have escaped with his life, but he was probably worried about losing his job. Hala Airlines is a Somali company with headquarters in Nairobi, Kenya. They began operations in 2016, servicing flights to several destinations around Somalia and Kenya. On July 11th of 2023, a routine flight ended in dramatic fashion. CCTV cameras were rolling to capture the entire thing. A small plane carrying 30 passengers and 4 crew members landed on the runway in the Somalian capital of Mogadishu. At first, it seems like a routine landing, but then something goes horribly wrong. The plane veers off the runway and crashes through a reinforced fence. The cockpit suffered heavy damage, and both propellers were destroyed. By some miracle, only 2 passengers suffered minor injuries during the crash. Early investigations determined that wind shear caused the plane to veer off the runway. The report says our Tanzanian pilot lost control due to strong winds. It caused a break in the left main landing gear, which explains why the plane veered violently to the left. The Bakra Nangal Dam is a concrete gravity dam on the Sutlej River in northern India. Its reservoir, known locally as Gobind Sagar, holds up to 9.34 billion cubic meters of water. That makes it the 3rd largest reservoir in India in terms of water storage. Over the years, Bakra Dam has become a popular tourist attraction in Himachal Pradesh. India's first Prime Minister called it the New Temple of Resurgent India in 1963. Thankfully, there were no tourists nearby when a massive landslide occurred by the entrance. The only people around were 2 security guards who had to run for their lives.
देखो वो एक
वही गल है वो तो पहले दौड़ ली हुई
वो देखो
है ना मतलब आने से पहले भाग चुकी है
ओए ओए ओए
बैरियर ते हैं जात चक्कियां
ए सटिया
ये जरूर तो देख लिया
ओए ओ वाह ओ यार पैच बढ़ गई
हां
ओ मोया
ये मुंडी तो बचे
The guards noticed small stones falling from the hill at first. Both of them, being natives to landslide-prone India, could read the writing on the wall. They hightailed it moments before the mountain collapsed and crushed their guard post. According to the Geological Survey of India, 22 areas around the rim of the Bakra Reservoir are prone to landslides. They said that unplanned excavations of hills and slopes in a few key places are leading to failures in the area. The reservoir also has some bad vibes attached to it. To fill it, they had to submerge about 371 small villages. 50 years after its completion, and some are still waiting for fair compensation. For example, one guy's family gave nearly 15 acres of land for the project and still hasn't gotten his fair dues. On April 6th of 2018, a crowd gathered by the shore in Vordingborg, Denmark. The old ferry town is home to about 12,000 people, but was making room for more. First, they needed to tear down a 36-year-old silo. After 6 months of careful planning, they were ready to press the button. But, as we all know, things don't always go according to plan. The excited crowd watched the 170-foot tower fall in the wrong direction.
Holy
Det ser ikke rigtig ud, det der.
det gør det i hvert fald ikke. Nøj.
Så for satan. Kan du huske, vi spurgte, om man havde styr på det?
Ja, jeg sagde, at han ikke havde.
Kunne du snakke om, at de var for stive, de der bagkorter der? Ej. Vi skulle da have sagt det til ham, hva'?
Der var det bibliotek. Hold kæft, det bliver dyrt, det der, mand.
Instead of falling in the intended safety zone, the tower toppled onto the local cultural center. The building houses the administrative offices of the Vordingborg libraries and a music school. Thankfully, nobody was inside when the tower crashed, though. Volunteer firefighters worked through the night to clear the rubble. Miraculously, the building didn't suffer much interior damage. Books and papers were covered in dust, but it wasn't anything a little TLC couldn't fix. And we're not sure why this silo fell the wrong way. Authorities in Denmark investigated the issue, but never released a conclusion. We're guessing they chalked it up to bad luck. The Oroville Dam is an earthfill embankment dam east of Oroville, California, in the Sierra Nevada foothills. At 770 feet high, it's technically the tallest dam in the United States. Oroville's three main purposes are water supply, hydroelectricity, and flood control. All three were put to the test in February of 2017. For California, the first half of 2017 was marred by record-breaking floods. Northern Cali saw its wettest weather in nearly a century. Damage estimates exceeded $1.55 billion. The flooding was so bad that it eroded the main spillway at the Oroville Dam, prompting the evacuation of 188,000 people. Dam operators noticed a massive crater about halfway down the main spillway. The concrete had eroded and water was escaping from the main chute. The Department of Water Resources thought they controlled the issue when they stopped the water flowing through the spillway. They wanted to get out and assess the damage. Meanwhile, water levels on Lake Oroville continued rising. They were stuck between a rock and a hard place. They could either reopen the damaged spillway and risk further damage, or let water levels on the lake keep rising and put the unused emergency spillway to the test. They opted for the latter. On February 11th, the emergency spillway carried water for the first time since 1968. The issue is that they can't control the water flow, not without opening the main spillway. Too much water could overflow the river below and flood nearby communities. That's why on February 12th, the order went out to evacuate the Feather River Basin. 24 hours later, about 188,000 people had fled the immediate area. Thankfully, enough water spilled over to lower levels in Lake Oroville. This allowed them to keep the main spillway closed until they could inspect and repair the damage. Repairs were completed in 2019, and the DWR made plans to keep water levels on Lake Oroville lower than before. Hopefully, it never happens again, but that's up to Mother Nature. Springfield is a small city between Dayton and Columbus, Ohio. They're situated along the Mad River, where you'll find the ruins of an abandoned 90-year-old power plant. The Mad River Power Plant went up in October of 1927. In 2010, they began tearing it down. The demolition had been going smoothly up until November. That's when crews were tasked with taking down a 275-foot smokestack. They rigged it with explosives and cut away part of the side. The tower was supposed to fall east into a clearing. Unfortunately, it had a mind of its own. The tower fell to the southeast and smashed through a building full of backup generators. It also took down two 12,000-volt power lines, which made the situation extremely dangerous. The job was handled by Advanced Explosives Demolition Incorporated, an Idaho-based company. They said the explosives detonated correctly, but an undetected crack on the south side pulled the tower in the wrong direction. About 4,000 people in the Springfield area lost power. While the company was relieved nobody got hurt, the accident was just the beginning of their worries. First Energy, the company that owns the power lines, said the botched demolition caused $19 million in losses. They sued for damages and settled before trial. Instead of states or provinces, Colombia is divided into 32 departments. The Antioquia department is the 6th largest, although most of its territory consists of mountains and valleys. It hosts the Colombian capital of Medellin and extends to a tropical paradise along the Caribbean coast. On March 12th of 2023, a group of construction workers began hearing cracking noises coming from a retaining wall. Unfortunately, this was the second time something like this had happened to the same crew at the same site. They knew a landslide was imminent, so they all stepped back and watched their hard work come crashing down.
Vea cómo salen volando esas guayas, huevón. ¡Quita! ¡Corra! ¡Corra! ¡Ay, gran gonorrea! ¡Ay, Señor bendito! ¡Ay, Padre celestial! ¡Ay, gonorrea! ¡Ay, gonorrea como de vino! ¡Ay, Padre celestial! ¡Ay, Dios mío! Gracias a Dios nos quitamos de ahí. ¡Ay, marica! ¡Ay, Jehová bendito Señor! ¡Vea! ¡Ay, marica! ¡Gran gonorrea, huevón!
From what we can gather, this retaining wall was part of the Pacifica 1 project. The plan was to build a road that would connect the municipality of Bolombolo with Medellin and the rest of southwestern Antioquia. The funny thing is, retaining walls are supposed to prevent this very thing from happening. They're geotechnical structures meant to reinforce soil and increase its load-bearing abilities. Whoever conducted the soil tests on this wall must have been new. That, or they're really bad at their job. Remember, this apparently happened twice. Bangalore, India is the capital and largest city in the southern state of Karnataka. About 8 million people live within the city, making it India's third largest by population. The city sports a pleasant climate year-round. That's because it sits about 3,000 feet above sea level on the Deccan Plateau. Its parks and green spaces earned it the nickname Garden City. But don't let all that greenery fool you. It has a serious problem with building collapses, especially during the rainy season. Water erodes the poorly constructed foundations, which leads to cracks, tilts, and total failures. On September 27th of 2021, 40 people narrowly escaped a building on the verge of collapse. According to reports, the residents were evacuated long before the building fell. However, there were 40 workers inside trying to prevent the structure from collapsing. Everyone ran for their lives once it passed the point of no return. It seems like local officials saw this collapse coming. In 2019, a committee identified 185 buildings in danger of collapsing. They marked them for demolition, but only 10 were ever torn down. According to the government, heavy rains had damaged another 2,500 homes. Whether or not they were on the verge of collapse is anyone's guess. Muzaffarnagar is a small city in the Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. Because it's located in the middle of a highly fertile region, it's among the state's most developed and prosperous cities. That means they have money to spend on replacing decaying infrastructure like old bridges. On September 26th of 2022, a demolition crew arrived to remove a dilapidated bridge. They drove an excavator out to the middle and began hammering away. It seems like someone should have rethought this plan. What happened next shouldn't have surprised anybody.
Oh! लिगड़ गया
According to reports, the driver was rescued later on. The bridge itself was over 100 years old. Tearing it down was part of a larger plan to widen the highway along the canal. Technically, it was a job well done. Now they just have to fish that excavator out of there. Rio Branco, Brazil is a large city in the Acre River Valley. It's home to about 419,000 people and one oblivious truck driver. You could say he started his new year out with a bang. On January 21st of 2020, a police helicopter was preparing for takeoff at a strategic location in the city center. From there, it could easily patrol the entire city in record time. Unfortunately, this patrol mission never got off the ground. That's because our truck driver ignored all the police signs and drove straight into the spinning blades. Five people were inside the helicopter and 3 inside the truck when they collided. Thankfully, nobody was seriously hurt. The truck was a government vehicle used to transport waste from a local hospital. Nobody could explain why the driver got so close. This type of helicopter patrol is very common in Rio Branco. These landings happen everywhere in the city, and police take every precaution to ensure nobody gets near the blades. There are signs and barriers and people stationed all around. This video goes to show that no matter how hard you try, you can't fix stupid. A dynamometer, or a dyno for short, is a tool used to measure an engine's torque in RPM. It's how you calculate a car's horsepower. The equation is horsepower equals torque times RPM divided by 5,252. Now, truck enthusiasts love to push their vehicles to the limit. Every year, the city of Ogden, Utah holds an event to see whose truck can put out the most horsepower. Drivers hook themselves up to a dyno and push their engines to the absolute limit. On September 20th of 2020, one driver pushed a little too far. Sean and his truck Master Shredder had already topped 2,920 horsepower and over 4,000 torque, but he wanted more. He was convinced old Shredder could handle it. Lucky for Sean, he escaped the fireball with a few bruises and minor burns. Everyone acted quickly to extinguish the fire before it spread around the event. The record for most horsepower belongs to a 44-foot tall, 87-foot long Finnish-made engine. It's the largest internal combustion engine ever made and pumps out a whopping 107,390 horsepower. It powers the Emma Maersk, one of the biggest container ships ever built. Its top speed? About 25.5 knots, or 29.3 miles per hour. Zbałęzin is a small town in western Poland situated on the Orba River. Back on January 14th of 2020, a local truck driver learned a valuable lesson about speed limits. CCTV footage shows him driving through the Polish backcountry with an excavator on his flatbed. As he goes around a bend, he comes in a bit too hot and wasn't able to stop in time for a passing train. The high-speed train flies by and clips the back of the truck. However, footage from a different angle puts the whole story in perspective. Our driver approaches way too fast. You can tell he slammed on the brakes by the way the cab dips down. The truck was too heavy to stop in time. Here, the man makes a decision: stop and risk the cab landing on the tracks, or try to outrun the train. He chose the latter. The train smashes the flatbed and spins it 90 degrees. Imagine being in one of those cars, watching this whole thing happen. Out of the 150 people on board, only 4 were injured, including 2 train operators. The truck driver walked away unscathed, though his truck was a lost cause. The city of Minneapolis used to be home to the Hubert H. Humphrey Metrodome, a massive stadium that served as the home field for the Minnesota Vikings for over 30 years. We say used to because in mid-December of 2013, disaster struck the Metrodome. It all started when a blizzard impacted the city overnight. As the storm intensified, the roof of the Metrodome began to sag under the weight of the snow. The facility's management attempted to clear the snow from the roof, but were unsuccessful. By Sunday morning, the roof had reached its breaking point. Lucky for us, security cameras inside the stadium captured the entire disaster as it happened. The first sign of impending doom is the snow leaking from the roof right as it began to sag. Only a few short moments later, the entire structure gave way, dumping thousands of pounds of snow onto the field below. From another angle, you can see the roof slowly sinking down over the span of a minute. Small tears start letting snow in, while the lights and scaffolding only add to the overwhelming weight of the roof. By the end of the video, the entire thing is nearly touching the field. The cause of the collapse was a combination of factors, including the age of the roof and the weight of the snow. The inflatable roof was constructed of a Teflon-coated fiberglass fabric that had become brittle with age. The storm brought 17 inches of snow to the Minneapolis area, putting an enormous strain on the roof. The Metrodome was ultimately demolished in 2014, and a new arena was built in its place, this time with a much more durable roof. Nestled in the heart of Kazakhstan, Karaganda is a city steeped in a rich and intricate history. While once renowned for its coal mining industry, the city has undergone significant transformation in recent decades. The rapid influx of population triggered a construction frenzy, yet not all structures met the expected standards. On April 6th of 2012, one of these newly erected buildings suddenly crumbled, and at first glance, it could easily be mistaken for a scene from a CGI rendering.
Ужас! Ужас! Офигеть!
Reports suggest that in the days leading up to the collapse, the building had been tilting precariously, providing ample time for all 111 residents to evacuate. Miraculously, there were no injuries because of this. The Huangpu River is a 70-mile waterway flowing through central Shanghai, China. Its waters span a width of more than 1,300 feet and plunge to depths of up to 30 feet in certain areas. For many locals, the river serves as a vital transportation route, offering a scenic backdrop for daily commutes. Moreover, it even plays host to luxurious yacht tours, allowing residents and visitors to explore the city from a different perspective. On the evening of August 7th of 2021, an idyllic cruise on one of these yachts turned into a harrowing ordeal. 11 passengers were aboard the ship when it suddenly burst into flames. Security camera footage shows first responders rushing to get people off the yacht. You can imagine the panic they must feel to get the hell out of there. One guy even almost goes overboard. Not long after, the entire ship was up in flames. Lu Jingjun, an officer aboard a marine patrol boat, described the scene as they approached the stricken yacht. All they saw was a thick plume of black smoke and passengers with life jackets on in the water. The fire department made quick work of the fire once they arrived. The boat was a loss, but everybody involved was okay. The city of Bangalore is the capital of the Indian state of Karnataka. In 2001, researchers discovered Stone Age artifacts on the city's outskirts, suggesting humans settled there around 4000 BCE. It's been a growing hotspot ever since. In 2017, the city was looking to expand. They knocked down an old theater and began digging an 80-foot hole to lay the foundations for a new high-rise development. Then, on July 28th of 2020, a local noticed cracks forming in a 3-story building sitting directly next to the giant hole. Take a guess what happened next. Several different angles capture the building as it falls into the hole. Sparks fly on the ground floor as it topples end over end, and the crash sends a massive cloud of dust into the air before everything settles. A closer angle shows the ground giving out from underneath the building. Thankfully, nobody was inside. The fire department got everyone out of the building moments before the collapse. There wasn't much they could do to save the structure itself, as getting crew in there was far too risky. The blame fell on the developer for poor project planning, and they likely had to compensate for damages. Next time, maybe they'll be more careful when digging a massive hole in the middle of a heavily populated area. Well, if you enjoyed this video and want to see another just like it, then be sure to click the link on screen now. With that, thanks for watching, and be sure to tune in next time.